Actually, I have to say I'm humbled to be here. One, because I see many of um, these esteemed engineers. I must acknowledge Engineer Gibbs. He was one of those engineers who has really impacted a lot when I was just a tot in engineering, and I have to acknowledge those true patrons of engineering. So, the hat that I wear tonight is not really that of TCL Group, but that of an engineer and one of a perpetual student that is looking at sustainable, durable solutions that can really build our country from being classified as a third world country to that of a more developed one. So with that being said, my agenda is very tight, so I'll ask Corey to keep me in line in terms of time. I will be speaking a little bit about sustainable engineering with respect to pavement solutions, concrete solutions, yes, that we do offer through our group, but more so that can be represented in a symbiotic relationship with flexible pavement. I will touch on a Trinidad case study that I have actually done with our group, and I will share with you all the financial analysis of some of these roads that we have converted to concrete so that we have a good comparison within the region and see how it can be mirrored in Barbados, and of course look at the conclusion and future considerations. So, of course I must ask, why does concrete lead when it comes to road development? Is it because it stands the test of time? I think Engineer Gibbs would be one of those who would say, what is the oldest structures in the world? And of course, what comes to mind is the pyramids, right? It's one of the oldest man-made structures in this world. So we know it stands the test of time. But of course, the next question, which would always be raised by Mr. Tudor, what is the cost? So when we design with three parameters: economic, social and functional advantages. This is the impact to the public, and of course a major aspect that we are now moving into, which is the environmental advantages. All right? Everything we talk about today goes with a green initiative. So it's on those three main tiers. Most of our actually all of our designs are done. So some of the benefits of concrete versus asphalt. Of course, with durability, life cycle cost analysis, which is something that we still have yet to convince our heads in authority of, as opposed to just initial construction costs. We continue to stay in the now and not in the future. So thank you, Engineer Hazard, for raising that point. We look at also fuel consumption, something called urban heat island effect. And of course, anybody who has at the later in the question segment, feel free to ask me on any of these points. Light reflection, of course, one of the key things is that light reduction is reduced by 30%. So we save on power that is emitted in our lighting, on our public lighting systems. There's a higher skid resistance, so it's actually a safer road to use. It's less noisy. One of the preconceived notions is that concrete roads are very noisy. How do we get rid of the bump, bump, bump? Again, I invite anyone, please come to Trinidad, Guyana, or Latin America and drive on one of our roads. We don't have these issues. Tunnel construction, fires seem to be one of the key points. If there were to have a fire to occur on asphalt, what happens to it? It becomes immediately flammable. So now the world standards is that anywhere you will have tunnels, any kind of, for instance, in Sandy Lane where we have those golf cart tunnels, it's all done in concrete. So concrete solutions. We have a battery of solutions, and I'm not going to get into it in depth because then we'll be spending most of our night here. So the key things, and most of you all are familiar with them, would be the absolute low-cost solution, which is soil cement stabilization. What we do is use a little bit of cement with the in-situ subgrade material. We rotivate, mix, stabilize, and we get a better product that's able to stand up a little bit better. We've got cement treated base. We've got, of course, our conventional concrete pavement. Then we have, at the CEMEX group, done quite a bit of research and development, and we have come up with some new technologies, of course, in conjunction with our primary business. But we really speak more into thin concrete pavements as well as concrete overlays and something called white topping. So some of those you all may be familiar with, but we have basically optimized the designs to ensure that it's affordable. Affordable, why? Because most of the countries that we work out of are not heavily developed and do not have the budget to constantly maintain. So, just touching base, these slides really compare asphalt to concrete, asphalt being the blue, concrete being the orange ones as we move forward in slides. And you see when you compare the soil cement stabilization, it's actually cheaper than regular bitumen stabilized base. Cement treated base, we look at the total life cycle cost. So if you look at the one on the extreme right, there is something called full-depth recycling. Of course, I'm sure you all would have done an element of that, where there's a major cost savings on time and cost, as well as the longevity of it. Most times you get lifespans greater than 20 years when you go with the option of full-depth reclamation through the use of cement. Thin concrete pavements, again, what does this entail? We are accustomed with heavily designed concrete roads with a lot of reinforcement. It's very tedious. You get a lot of plastic shrinkage cracking. You get the common problems associated with concrete done wrong. We have worked on using the chemistry of cement to really evolve the technologies that we have basically engineered and now have available. And my colleague Juan will touch on those through the use of concrete. Concrete overlays, this is basically a very, very nice one. I personally like it. Why? Because we use the existing asphalt surface as the base, and we do a concrete topping on top of that. So effectively, you don't lose or have wastage in terms of asphalt. I know it's a little, everybody's looking at me like, what am I saying? Normally we put asphalt on concrete. In this case, we actually use the asphalt surface as the base, and we put a concrete topping on top of it. So I could explain the engineering behind it a little bit more, so feel free after and we can have a discussion on it. So the Trinidad case study. I want you to pay particular attention to this picture, this very first picture. Does this remind you of some of the roads in Barbados? I think so, right? And this is what we had completed just 4 days into construction. So what is it? Basically, it was a combination of solutions. What we did was cement treated base along with a concrete topping in some cases, and then where we did have asphalt, we did a white topping. So the concrete design remained the same, but the base preparation was slightly different. So you're seeing this section is actually asphalt, and the pitted parts we removed and we did a cement treated base on it, and we basically leveled it off and made it into one homogenic material. The construction process is pretty much the same, with the exception that now you introduce the heaviest bit of equipment, which is a rotavator, in order to get the mix homogenic. And the technology with respect to the concrete laying, I want to jump to that side, is basically no hard mats, there's no heavy equipment. It's just a simple screed that we use to place roughly 120 meter cubes of concrete per night. Why at night? Simply because in the heat of the day, you will be opening up your concrete to have a lot of issues, one, with thermal cracking, plastic shrinkage cracking, all these things. Plus, with the methodology, you don't want your concrete setting up on you without getting the rest in place. So most times, it's mandatory that we do this work at night, and it also negates having to deal too much with the traffic issues. So it's all properly planned and executed to ensure we don't have public outcries based on traffic constraints. So for this, we used a screed, and then we have these long handled tools that we use, which is simple tools which are floats, bump cutters, and it's the technique in which we use it that gives to us a finished road that looks like this. This was approximately just under 1 kilometer of road that we did with absolutely no plastic shrinkage cracking. The texture that we do, and I want to just touch base. Are you able to see this? It's a raked finish. Why? We introduce micro drains into it, which negates hydroplaning. So there is no water settlement at all at any point in time, even in heavy downpours on the surface of the roads. So this is one of the key techniques in terms of our concrete, the texturing of it. So what does this cost? So Mr. Tudor, I'm sure you are looking at this very good. The initial cost comparison, and this was done for Guyana, and let me just show to you the figures. If I extrapolate, 1,000 meters squared would have cost roughly 68,000 US, of which per meter squared it's about 68 US per meter squared. In comparison to asphalt, with their comparable asphalt design, it's about $74 per meter squared. So actually it was cheaper in Guyana to do concrete roads than asphalt. And I asked the question, why? They import asphalt. Cement is brought in as a local commodity to them. The cost of importation of asphalt cement was significantly higher. So this was the cost comparison. So they were actually doing quite a bit more savings in their analysis. So the government has actually been working with us to convert quite a bit of what we call the hinterland or remote roads of Guyana to more durable solutions. So that's just coming out of the Guyana pilot project. In Trinidad, of course, we love asphalt. We manufacture asphalt. I love asphalt. I think there's a great niche for that. But as I said, diversification is one of the key parameters in moving any economy forward. And I'll share with you some costing done by MIT. And it's roughly 85 US versus 57 US. So again, there's not much. When you look at the disparity, people would say that's still not enough savings for me to convert to concrete. Thankfully, we have had significant progress with our government where they are now recognizing that roads should be done with a life cycle cost analysis simply because maintenance is so high. And this is a country where we produce asphalt. So that's just food for thought. Barbados, and these are just projected costs because we have yet to do a pilot here, and I use market prices, so it was not skewed towards Arawak or anything. This was just taken off, and it shows a major disparity. It's almost twice the cost, concrete roads versus asphalt. But thankfully this morning, in meeting with Mr. Tudor, I think they were able to have a little bit more savings with concrete, no? And instead of 160, I think it was 145 US. So I thank him for giving to me a little bit more competitive pricing on concrete. But as I say, we are willing to work to come up with solutions that fits the symptoms that is experienced by Barbados. We can't put plasters all the time. First of all, we need to diagnose what are the issues and then give proper remedies in order to negate having those problems. So I want to conclude basically in this slide where the cost projections of raw materials from MIT Hub, which is a very good source of information from 2020 to 2050, this shows the cost of concrete, which pretty much stays the same. This is the projected cost of asphalt. So in the year 2020 to 2030, what do you think would be the cost of asphalt roads? This is just a projection, something that Mr. Hazard raised with us. MIT has done extensive studies. They know where it's going to go. So my advice would be, look at your design materials, design and construction, use, and end of life. Simply because I don't think we could afford to have wastage. Everything can be recoverable and reused. So on that note, thank you very much.